So the war of words heating up now between President Obama and Speaker of the House John Boehner as they battle over the president's extensive use of executive authority. Well, last week, as you recall, President Obama told the GOP to sue him. Speaker Boehner now blasting that remark as something beneath the dignity of the president's office, saying he plans to move ahead with a lawsuit later this month, saying, quote, "Too often over the past 5 years, the president has circumvented the American people and their elected representatives through executive action, changing and creating his own laws, and excusing himself from enforcing statutes he's sworn to uphold, at times even boasting about his willingness to do it, as if daring the American people to stop him." Well, the White House doubling down today, insisting the president is acting within the law as he handles the immigration crisis along our southern border.
The law requires that. And again, this is something the administration is committed to, is enforcing the law. So the president is well aware of what's happening along the southwest border. And that is why you've seen the wide range of steps from the authority the president already has to enforce the law.
Chris Steyerwelt is our Fox News digital politics editor. All right, a lot to chomp on here, Chris. What's your analysis about this suit moving forward? Who has more to lose or to gain, Speaker of the House Boehner or President Barack Obama?
Well, the stakes are enormous, to say the least. For John Boehner, he better win, because the deal is, if he loses, if the courts affirm the president's ability to rewrite laws and enforce this degree of selective enforcement that we haven't seen before, and executive orders of this kind of scope, if that's what happens, the executive branch will be forever enlarged in its power. This House, this Congress will be disempowered, and Boehner won't have much left to talk about. And the president will be able to do essentially what he wants, regardless of what happens in the midterm elections in the next 2 years. But if Boehner wins, the president's agenda, which is essentially to use these expanded executive powers to force through an agenda to leave his legacy on issues, especially like immigration and global warming, that he can say that he had a successful presidency. The president's future is at stake very much here. If he loses on this, there's not much left for him to say or do other than to have to, for really the first time, negotiate with Republicans on consequential things.
Yeah, it's interesting because in this editorial that the speaker writes, he says, you know, look, people are still asking, where are the jobs? The House has passed more than 40 jobs bills that would help, but Washington Democrats, led by the president, just ignore them. Is that the basis? I know there's a lot of other issues. We just talked about immigration as well. Is this the basis of trying to move forward with this lawsuit?
The basis here are two things: immigration and Obamacare. The president has used, the Democrats talk about the number of executive orders or the number of executive actions. The number is a canard here. It's not important. The scope and consequence, where the president rewrites essentially black letter law. You must do this by this date. You must not do this by that date. He disregards those things and says he knows what's better. And this has even come out, and you remember the Bo Bergdahl prisoner swap for those 5 Taliban leaders. When that happened, the president said, look, I know what the law said that I had to consult with you, but I didn't want to do it. It wasn't the thing I wanted to do, so I didn't. So those are the kinds of moves that Boehner's trying to block.
Can you imagine the legal teams on both sides of this fence right now? I mean, I'm just thinking about watching House of Cards. I mean, can you imagine how they're hunkering down, the Obama team and the Boehner team? I mean, what kind of advice both are getting? Are they hearing, yeah, we think both of you can win?
Well, I'm sure that's part of it, but the biggest part is the president's legal team has been a big loser in the last, let's say, year at the Supreme Court, especially on this question of what the president's powers to say and do are. And these include a lot of unanimous decisions from including justices that the president himself appointed. So he's got a big problem when it comes to making the case for his degree of newly invented executive authority. And Boehner has a pretty good case to make, but these stakes are high, and we will be watching this closely because there's some nervous politicians in town about this one.
No doubt. Understatement of the century, maybe. Thanks so much, Chris. Great to see you.
You bet.